Maryland goes 16-17 in year two under Kevin Willard, coming off a tournament appearance. Obviously, personnel was a little different last year, but it was similar, and I think Maryland did disappoint. You bring back a chunk of pieces. You bring in some interesting guys. You lose Jameer Young and Dante Scott, who are just huge pieces to what Maryland did. So Christian Nick here with Ahmed Ghafir, Ghafir the Turtle, loved at. He's been covering Maryland for a long time. Ahmed, thanks for joining us. Do you expect Maryland to be taking another step forward this year in a loaded Big Ten? Behind Julian Reese and these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, appreciate you guys having me on. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's a disappointing year. Not on brand for Maryland basketball to finish 500. So when you think about two sub 500 seasons in a span of 3 years, you're kind of going through just a really interesting stretch. So it was definitely a pivotal offseason. Julian Reese, there were a lot of questions about whether he was going to come back, and if he didn't come back, that would have been an even bigger question for what Maryland was going to look like this year. Obviously, Willard was able to kind of get a 180, get that secured, get Derek Queen in the bag. So there are a lot of pieces right now. I think the biggest question is kind of how it all meshes together. But yeah, I think there's optimism that you can take a step forward, and frankly, Maryland kind of needs to take a step forward. I think if Maryland has another disappointing year in year three, I'm not sure that the program can kind of afford that. So I think this is a really pivotal year for Maryland to get the fan base back in, as much as they have the pieces to get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about meshing with everyone, all the new pieces. I actually really like this transfer class that he brought in. Besides the five-star Derek Queen, we'll talk about him soon, the freshman. But what can you tell us about the newcomers? Jacoby Gillespie from Belmont, Selton Miguel from South Florida, Rodney Rice from Virginia Tech, Tafari Gapari from Georgia Tech, and Jalen Young from Memphis.
Yeah, Jacoby Gillespie starting out right there. That was Maryland's first portal commitment, and I think like I mentioned in the beginning, Julian Reese, whether he was going to come back, that was a big piece. Jameer Young replacing his production. Jameer Young was Mr. Do It All. Frankly, did really everything, and when when he had an off night, Maryland had an off night. So Jacoby Gillespie is that number one guy where he's coming in to run the point there. Then you have Selton Miguel, who came over from USF. Kevin Norris, the Maryland's newest assistant, hired this offseason. He was the one who has long had the relationship with Selton Miguel there. Is also the godbrother of Bruno Fernando, who for Maryland fans was a star center, but obviously having that connection to Angolans, both of them landing at Maryland. So that was a nice connection that Maryland fans were able to lean on to get a big piece. So I expect Selton Miguel to really step in as a two, as more of a physical guy, can really get downhill and score around the rim. Same with Gillespie. I think he does a good job as well in creating as well. But I think Gillespie as well has some three-point potential, and that was an area that Maryland really struggled with last year. Rodney Rice, he's another guy who has potential to run the point. It seems like maybe more of a two than a one right now. So I think with him, it's really about staying healthy and how he's kind of able to mesh at this level. He's only played, I believe, 7-8 games at Virginia Tech before he transferred going into last season, and obviously was able to kind of rehab, get workouts in around College Park with his trainers and whatnot while he was taking classes. So I'd expect Rodney Rice to again be a big piece in the backcourt, whether probably more of a rotational role rather than a starting role. And then you talk about Tafari Gapare, an athletic big man who likely plays the four there. I expect him to kind of round out the rotation with Julian Reese, Brandon Peters as well, to Jordan Geronimo to kind of round out that front court rotation there. So again, and then Jalen Young, Maryland lost Jahari Long, who it was within the last minute and a half of the opening Big Ten tournament game to a season-ending injury for the rest of this year as well. So Jalen Young, he comes in over from Memphis, filling in that likely third role or third option as a primary point guard.
Quickly on Jalen Young, he's a guy that wasn't, fell out of the Memphis' rotation at times last year, but that was a team that was very dysfunctional, and he was the guy that stood out to me as a guy always giving 100% effort and really making winning plays. I think he's an awesome glue guy. I'm excited to see what he does.
And the big part about Jay Young was that he did a good job defensively, and Kevin Willard, offensively he's always transparent about offense takes a little bit longer for kind of everything to come together, but defense is kind of his bread and butter. That the Maryland fans have gotten a chance to see a little bit of some aggressive styles, whether in the full quarter or half court through the first 2 years, and I think that's kind of where Jay, I think that he can really make an impact there.
So, Mark Turgeon's teams from 2016 to 2021, a lot of just really balanced teams, like really good offensive teams and really good defensive teams. Also, I went to Wake Forest. My heart goes out to you that you had to experience Danny Manning. We had to experience that for way too long. But Kevin Willard comes in, and 2 years ago when you were that 8 seed, a really good balanced team. 36th offensively, 32nd defensively, and last year the defense was elite, 14th best defense. Offense is just a mess. It was just a mess because Jameer Young was fantastic at the guard position, and guys like Scott and Reese, a lot of just physical guys, like kind of hybrid forwards, just mismatches, right? Very physical guys. And I look at this year's roster, and I'm wondering, like, was there a priority by Willard to kind of have the team look a little bit different, just to have more guys who can handle the ball, to like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get you. I mean, I think the part was, getting shooters, getting offense, getting guys that can score the ball. I mean, last year, the biggest problem was Maryland. I don't have the number in front of me, but they were one of the worst in the country in 3-point percentage. There was no ability to stretch the floor at all. And in games when Maryland could score, I believe it was the Nebraska game midway through January, Maryland shot the ball a little bit better from 3, and you could start to see the offense starting to fall a little bit more. But when the outside shot isn't there, the spacing is off. It was hard to watch at times, and that's kind of why Jameer Young kind of had to go, crazy, honestly. If he didn't go off, Maryland really didn't have a chance. I think he had 3 30-point games. It was I think that was kind of the big thing. So yeah, obviously, getting guys like Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel, all those guys can shoot it. But I think, I think another guy I hadn't talked about and can make a difference in that area is Chance Stevens. He missed last year with suffered a injury during off-season workouts, so he was sidelined through the full year. And it sounded like there was a chance that he could potentially make it at the end of the year, but with the way the season was going, kind of getting someone back in who missed his full season, getting him back going in March, April is a little bit tough. So I think that's somewhere. Obviously he's been cleared now. He's been able to showcase that 3-point shooting in practice. So whether that translates to games, you don't always know 100%, but I think that's a piece that the returning piece that can kind of fix that problem.
Yeah, just to throw some numbers out there with the 3-point percent and the guys coming in who are shooters, obviously. Last season, they were dead last in league play at 28%. And Miguel comes in 2+ makes a game at 39%. Gillespie comes in at almost 2+ makes a game at 39% as well. So I think Willard did a good job addressing those needs for sure.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it was hard on the eyes from 3 last year.
It was, yeah.
One quick note on Chance Stevens. I completely forgot about him. I remember him. He had his career high against Wake Forest, actually, in the Jamaica class. He had 7 threes. That guy was killing us. He could shoot it. And I know he wasn't that was, like I said, his best. Like, he had a lot of games where he didn't score, play a lot of minutes, but I remember that game. He was an absolute sniper. So anyone who hits 7 threes in a game ever is always someone that is on my radar.
Well, we just got to figure out a way to tap back into that every night. But yeah, I think he had 52 made shots at his last season at Loyola Marymount, and 49 of them were from 3. So that's a specialty for sure.
Nick and I were talking yesterday about the fit of Derek Queen and Julian Reese. Can you tell us, what is expected, of those guys playing together in terms of spacing, but also just general expectations for Queen, because we know he's a super talented guy.
Yeah, I think I think the big question was kind of how they would play together, and Willard in a couple off-season interviews, he's kind of been consistent about it. Probably 12 to 15 minutes, and I think in those kinds of cases, Julian Reese is probably more suited for the 5 in that case, where Derek Queen is probably a bit more of a 4. I think that a big part of that is probably defensively. I think just Julian Reese being able to guard the Big Ten's best big men. I think that's probably a better matchup. Whereas Queen, again, like you said, I think offensively he's just so skilled around the rim, and his footwork he's just the way he's light on his feet. And again, he has good enough ball skills where he can kind of run point at times, and again it's kind of like that point forward role, but again it's just kind of all goes back to just kind of his comfort around the ball. But something that fans are kind of interested about, and I don't think it's going to be a big part of his game, but when he was at St. Francis before he transferred down to Montverde, he did a good job of being able to score inside and out. He had a smooth stroke from 3. And that was something that he's kind of gotten away from the last 2 years, where he's become more of an efficient big guy, and worked on conditioning to kind of become that that blue chip, that one of the top big men in the country. But again, I think that's something, being able to kind of stretch the floor a little bit, where he can play a little bit of the pick and pop, where we can fade back at 3, and you have Julian Reese down in the paint. So there's ways that you can kind of work with both of them, complement both of them, and not have them both take the same space. So I think that's kind of the big thing there, where you have a little bit more versatility offensively. But I think Julian Reese coming back, where he can kind of control the paint and play the 5 there, I think that's probably what's best suited for Maryland right there.
What can we expect from Deshaun Harris-Smith in year 2?
Yeah, like I said, I hadn't really talked about him, but with Selton Miguel, Jacoby Gillespie likely being 1 and 2 right there. The 3 spot's kind of that big question. And Jamie Kaiser Jr., he was a guy who, you talked about struggled from 3 last year. He struggled from 3. He was one of the guys. It definitely was not the only guy, but his departure, where he's headed to Butler now, that was kind of a void there. But Deshaun Harris-Smith, when I think Maryland fans, you kind of see his skill set, while he has the ability to kind of play point in a pinch, his scoring ability, his ability to get downhill, and again his efficiency around the rim, that's kind of where he thrives best. And I think kind of being that slashing wing is kind of his fit. And so I think being more efficient, and now like you said, Willard pointed to last year, just a lot of the college basketball being older guys, fifth and sixth year seniors due to COVID and whatnot. So Deshaun Harris-Smith kind of had some growing up and was going up against some older guys. So I think now that he has that offseason under his belt, that season of experience, kind of staying efficient and building on that confidence is kind of the next thing.
So Rodney Rice was a guy that at Virginia Tech was getting a lot of hype entering last year, and then all of a sudden he just disappeared. He was out. I remember hearing that an injury factored into that, but do you know anything about that story and what led to? And he's from close to Maryland, right? What was the story of him getting here, and is he healthy? What is he a guy that has like star potential? Like what do you think of Rodney Rice?
Yeah, it sounded like it was just kind of wasn't 100%. I guess kind of how he kind of fit in going into it, and sounded like there were just some question marks. And obviously, like you mentioned, just kind of with injuries, just trying to a chance to get it back to 100%. But again, I think when even before he entered the portal, I think there was kind of he had a strong desire of coming back closer to home. So once the portal already hit, he had his girlfriend went to Maryland. His dad is obviously with him being involved in the area. I think Maryland was kind of the school that if Maryland wanted him, then it was all going to work out. And pretty much the first day of the portal, kind of continued from there. So he's battled sounds like some minor stuff here and there through the summer, but sounds like he's kind of going into the season where he's expected to be healthy. But again, it's kind of that biggest question, how he adjusts. It's been this is I believe his 3rd year in college, and he struggled with injuries at this point. So how does it translate on a everyday scale in college basketball? I think that's kind of the biggest thing.
Chris, do you have any other personnel questions?
I got one more. So I guess when I look at the roster and I'm thinking about the ceiling it has, like we know that Julian Reese is probably the leader of this team, right? Like his presence on the interior on both ends is just so valuable. But I've just got my eyes on Jacoby Gillespie, and I'm like, this guy needs to make – he doesn't need to be Jameer Young, but I feel like he needs to make a similar jump of being like just ready to go in the Big Ten to average, 14 and 4, like at least something like that, and to, be efficient from three. Do you agree that this team, probably doesn't reach the tournament unless Gillespie or somebody else steps up and like is a really good guard? Or do you think like by committee it could be just like a bunch of guards who are contributing and like this team just kind of lives or wins with the front court?
Yeah. I think the big thing, and again, Jameer Young, that's just what he did on both ends, really. I think that's a lot of production to replace. So I don't know that I necessarily would say like I view like just Jacoby Gillespie as the guy that's saying like he has to. I would say really Jacoby Gillespie and Selton Miguel. I think both of those guys are probably as integral and kind of being that backcourt should be. There should be a lot of chemistry. They do a good job of playing off each other. So I think both of those guys being able to kind of step up, take that step forward, and both of them play a part in Maryland's 3-point shooting proposed solution for this year. So we'll see if that works out. But yeah, I would say if both of those transfers, I think if they're as advertised and they kind of do what they're expected to, Maryland should be able to get back in the tournament. But I think if there is a little bit of a hiccup or downturn, again, non-conference play isn't the strongest this year. There are a couple games. They got Villanova, Marquette, Syracuse. So they got a couple opportunities to kind of get right early, but I think that's kind of the biggest thing, just making sure that they hit the ground running.
Outlook question here: Willard has never made a Sweet 16, and he's only won 2 NCAA tournament games since 2008. Do you think this is the team that'll break through? And if not, do you think that Willard is on the hot seat?
I wouldn't say he would be on the hot seat. Like if Maryland doesn't get to a Sweet 16 this year, the concerns will still be there, but if Maryland will never be happy. Maryland fans will never be happy with just making the tournament at this point because Turgeon did that, and there were not many deep tournament runs. And you talk about only one Sweet 16. Maryland's only gone to the Sweet 16 twice since they won the national championship in 2002, and one of those was in 2003. So I mean, the tournament success, I think, has kind of been the biggest pain point for Maryland fans over the last 10, 15 years. So I would say that there's definitely pressure on Willard going into this year, just kind of considering last year went 16 and 17. But I think that I'm not sure that this team will be the team to get to the Sweet 16. I think the biggest thing is if they can get the 3-point shooting, or be able to get outside shooting. I think that could be a determining factor and kind of probably elevates that ceiling a little bit because again, I think Julian Reese, I think fans know what to expect from him on both ends. And again, Derek Queen, he's getting all the hype and as advertised and whatnot. But again, will it translate on the feet or on the court when the season starts? I think that's kind of a big thing there. But I think a lot of these pieces are kind of as expected. But I think if the 3-point shooting, if that can kind of improve from the 28% that we saw last year, I think they'll be able to give themselves a chance, and they'll contend against the Big Ten elite, the Indianas, the Purdue's this year.
Right. It's hard not to think if this Kevin Willard coach defense, like with this personnel, can continue playing defense at a top 25, top 30 level, that the offense just isn't like really bad. Like they has a bit of pop, on the perimeter, like that it should make a big difference. One last thing on Queen, like Reese, we know is a guy that you can like just throw it into in the post and bang, and that can lead to open threes. Is Queen a guy that you think is going to be getting those types of post touches, or is he more of like you mentioned he was a bit inside out in high school? Like, is he more of like a mild stretch four, like will be shooting like mid range? Like, can you just tell me a bit more about his game, because I haven't seen him play before.
Yeah, obviously, I think he again, I think he's back to the basket type of forward, where he's just efficient around the rim, and I think he can do that. He does a good job with his mid range, and like I said, his outside shooting is something that we hadn't seen too much of the last 2 years, but it's something that he's proven capable of early on. So I think early on, I'd expect him to see probably closer to the rim, and I expect once he starts to get a little bit more comfort through the season, through non-conference play, really, by the time Big Ten play, I think being able to stretch him out, 10, 12 feet from the rim and get him down to that mid-range. And again, that goes back to him and Julian Reese being able to complement each other down low in the paint. And that's where Derek Queen kind of is able to do that. So yeah, I think that he does have some of that ability to pop out. And again, the 3-point ability I think is more of it's not something that I'm expecting. Like Jalen Smith, for example, 2019, 2020. He was a big man, a true 5 that he could step out, and he was a threat really inside and out his sophomore year, where he had a good 3-point ball. I wouldn't say that I necessarily see Derek Queen playing that type of 3-point role, for example. But again, I think that he has that versatility. Whether it's in the pick and roll game, to be able to hit those mid range and those deep shots as well. But I think kind of as the season goes on, I think that's kind of where you see that comfort in that range kind of expand a little bit. But definitely he's most skilled around the rim. And again, I think he's just kind of proven to be efficient at the 4 there.
Well, I'll leave you with this. The COVID year, I had already decided by, March 8th, that Maryland was my champion pick. I loved that team. I really think that team could have made a serious run in the tournament. So we'll see if this is the year that Maryland can, make that elusive second weekend that Nick talks about. But this Big Ten is absolutely stacked. But what Maryland does have for them, no doubt, is big, strong dudes on the interior, which is something that has boded well in this league. So I think Julian Reese leading the way makes a big deal. I think could definitely be a first team All Big Ten guy. So thank you so much for joining us, Ahmed. Hope you have a great basketball season. We don't really care about football, but hope you enjoy the season too. And thanks again for joining.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys having me on. You have a good rest of your day.
You as well.